Alright, welcome to another painting tutorial. In this one we're going to look at another Forgeworld model, the Ork Mega Dread. So here's what it looked like when I was all finished, and I'll show you how I did each of those steps as well as some of the weathering. So starting off, I did basically the same colors as the Buzzgob Big Mech that I showed earlier tutorial. If you haven't seen that, you can check that out. But basically, your metals are your basic GW metal colors. I've got some brass mixed in there, a little bit of orc flesh, and then some reds, blues, and off-whites, and some other browns in there. As well, I used some Vallejo weathering pigments, so I've got some dark, sort of medium red and browns, and light ones. So this is from the Earth and Oxide pigment set, and I used all of them sort of different parts of the model just to add a little bit of sort of layering of pigments. And you'll see that later on in this tutorial. I'll show you kind of what that looks like as I did each of those steps. So only the driver there is got some flesh on them, used basic orc greens. I guess that should be orcs with a K. Some bronze. So here and there I did some bronze, some of the springs and various pieces like that. Some leather bits here and there. All the tubes I chose to do those blue, so they're some of them are covered up with weathering pigments, but there's a couple on the arm here and over there, and on the mech as well. He's all connected in. So I just chose one color and did everything that. So these teeth, I did those with the Ushabti bones, Andrew Dust sort of looks, as well as some bits here and there on the model. Red bits, so there's some red highlights here and there. Used my general red colors. And again, it's all sort of about the technique of which I painted those that gives the idea there. And your basic metals. Okay, so I did most of the assembly first, left a couple things detached. I magnetized the arms so that they can be taken off for transport, and I left the driver out until later. So first things first is I did a layer of silver on here, and I gave it a black wash. So I mixed up some other washes because using GW washes for a model this big would get expensive. So I used some Reaper inks and added some matte medium, or basically the same as the Lantham medium or the heavy metal medium, but cheaper versions of it just from other manufacturers. And so depending on what's available in your hobby area, that's what you might want to do. After that, I gave it a nice heavy dry brush of the silver, so that's that Necron silver, the dry one. The dry paints actually work pretty decently with a nice big brush on surfaces like this. You get nice highlights, and because it's dry, you don't have to spend as much time wiping the paint off. It's not necessary, but if you're going to be doing lots of it, it might be worth the investment. Okay, then I went along and did some highlights with the warp block. So I just picked out different areas that I wanted to sort of accentuate with different colors. Basically picked random pieces and painted them all slightly different color. And yeah, getting ready for the next bit. So here's how I got this paint chip sort of look. I took the first color and I kind of blotched it on in the middle. And avoided some of the edges there so it looked like it chipped off. And then I took the next color and I blotched it sort of inside of that just so that I would get a nice uneven paint color. So we're using large surfaces here, so using slightly different techniques than you would use for your regular 28mm models, 28mm heroic. So kind of going for more of a weathered look than trying to be not so much caricature but more realistic-ish. Use some dark grays there for areas I'm going to do checkered patterns on. Do the same blotching thing with the base color there with the red, so you can see, just trying to avoid some of the edges, some of the areas where it might look like it would chip. And doing the same on some of the other arms. This here is the Stegodon green, watered right down and painted over top of the brass. And then adding some little leather bits here and there, some other details. Doing the whitish color there, that's the bone color, and doing reds on all of the sort of plates on top of that, thinking that that's kind of the pattern, general pattern I'm doing here. I got a gray going on there on that checkered bit, and I'm building up the grays towards a white on these pieces here that I'm going to eventually paint into a checker pattern, and you'll see that in a minute. Okay, so here's all of the tubes that are on the driver there, painting those on light blue, and I'm going to do the same thing with some of the tubes on the model itself. Here we go. So just painting all of those blue and kind of dry brushing or over brushing just to get the texture kind of coming out. I end up covering up a lot of that with the weathering powders, but that gives you an idea. Okay, so this is how I paint checkered patterns. So I have a nice fine brush. I water down the paint quite a bit, and I draw my grid pattern first, and then I just start trying to fill it in. Sometimes it doesn't get nice coverage, so I have to do it a little bit twice. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's orcs. And yeah, so the thinner you can make these initial lines, the better the checker pattern will look, and it just takes lots and lots of practice. You want to modify your checker pattern so it kind of fits the scale of the model. You know, for figures, I might do a really small checker pattern. For bigger things, a bigger checker pattern makes sense. Okay, so I've done all the colors, so I'm starting to do some of the weathering here. So I'm just pushing in the darkest colors first. So I'm just taking a big wide brush and just kind of jabbing it in there, and not worried about too much about where it's going. Just picking random spots, and I'm going to do pieces here and there with each different color, so you can see kind of the effect that it's having there. And the idea that I'm using is I'm going to use a different color sort of covering different areas, and then once I'm done, I'm going to kind of cover most of the model with, you know, various reds and browns and yellow ochre type colors. And so the idea is that I get lots of sort of characterful weathering sort of a look. And that's it. So surprisingly, this model actually paints up quite quickly, mostly because it's a lot of silver, and the weathering hides a lot of the colors there. And then I added some things like checker patterns and reds and stuff. It's not quite as yellow, I think, in person. I think the lighting I'm using here maybe makes it look a little bit different, but yeah, really cool model. I want to put it on a big oval base. I think that would look appropriate, especially with all the monstrous creatures we have now in 40K. I think that would be fitting. For the areas that I had that stegodon blue and the sort of the patina look, I highlighted those up with the brass colors, and I did some of those exhausts that same way. I didn't really spend a lot of time doing the exhaust, anything special. But some people like to do the discoloring there and spend a bit more time. But I was just happy with how the weathering turned out. And because it's an Orky vehicle, there is no real right or wrong as long as it looks sufficiently worn out and random. I think that works. So yeah, really cool model. Goes along nicely with all my other Killicans and Def Dreads. I've got basically a whole mishmash Walker army now that I can field for pretty much any point size. Actually, I've even got a Stompa, that's right. So I've got just about all the sizes going there. Maybe I'll need to get some runt bots painted up from my Rogue Trader days. And yeah, anyways, hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Maybe you learned a thing or two about weathering. I know I'm just started getting into that. And be sure to check out the still images on my blog and other tutorials and stuff coming up. Hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.